Hey guys, it's Sai here. Hope you're all well. In this video, I am going to be reading some of my primary school reports from way back in the late 80s and early 90s. My mum kept some of my school reports from primary school. Don't quite know what happened to my secondary school reports, but maybe they were so bad that we just burnt them. And a few years ago, she passed them on to me when my parents moved. And oh, by the way, that little cutie there is me at primary school. Probably a little bit younger than these reports are from. These are from years. Just to explain, here in the UK, primary school there's reception class, and then there's years 1 to 6. But at my primary school, because it was just a little rural school, apart from reception class, there was 2 years to each class. So class 1 was reception, class 2 was years 1 and 2, class 3 was years 3 and 4, and class 4 was years 5 and 6. So yeah, I'm just going to read some of the school reports, just because it's interesting to see how I developed during that time, and also to see kind of like how much my personality was already set. So this first one, this is from June 1988. So I was almost 7. This was written by my teacher, Mrs. Murrell, who was my teacher in classes 2 and 3. So she was my teacher for 4 years. So yeah, I'm just going to read this out to you. Progress. Simon's achievements in language have provided me with a great deal of pleasure, and it must be said, amazement this year. His rapid progress must be very gratifying to everyone, not least himself. His written work particularly is very individual and has been admired by a number of people from other areas of education. He has not made such good progress in maths, largely I think because he finds difficulty in thinking in a mathematical fashion. His thinking seems to be very much in a narrative mode, and he would much rather make up stories than add or subtract numbers. That's pretty much true even now. I never have been very academic. General observations. Simon is a real bundle of contradictions. On the one hand, there is the little boy who has the confidence to stand up in front of the whole class and read a Thomas story, as in Thomas the Tank Engine, with expression, pauses for effect, and sound effects. The little boy who advertises his books and always places his name in a prominent place on his publications and makes certain that everyone is aware of his new book. In my primary school, we used to write stories, and then we used to make them into actual books. Like we used to bind them ourselves, and then they would go in the school library and we could read each other's books. On the other hand, there is the little boy who seems to be in a dream most of the time, who seldom has a pencil or a pair of plimsolls, and who leaves school looking like a badly decorated Christmas tree. That is just about my favourite comment in any of my school reports. None of which alters the fact that he is a truly delightful little boy, and definitely one of the characters of the class. Oh, that's quite sweet. I have to say, this is probably the best report. The others kind of like go steadily downhill from here, I think, which probably suggests that I was probably because my secondary school, I didn't do that brilliantly at secondary school either. So it's kind of like, it's quite weird to think that nearly 30 years ago, when I was 6, was kind of probably when I was at my, I don't know, the peak of my potential. But anyway, let's carry on. This one is a year later. So July 1989, when I was almost 8. This is from the first year of class 3, so what would be year 3. Even after 2 years of his company, Simon still has the ability to surprise me with the depth of his thought and the hidden facets of his ability. He has made a great deal of progress in many directions this year, but in very subtle ways which are perhaps noticeable only to those who know him well. Probably the most obvious change which has taken place is the increase in his all-round self-confidence. That's good to read. To the extent that he will now join in group and whole class discussion, offering his ideas and opinions. Okay, so maybe I did improve a little bit. The range of his reading is amazing and obviously affords him a great deal of enjoyment. I've always loved reading, and fulfillment. He continues to write lively picture stories, but I think that he is held back from more ambitious writing by his difficulty in manipulating writing tools. See, maybe that is what has held me back from my dream career of being a writer. Nearly 30 years later, I'm still working on that. It has become very obvious since we have been working on a more open-ended approach to maths that he is capable of far more complex thought in this area than was evident when he was working through the workbooks. I've always been the kind of person that's needed to work in my own way due to my dyspraxia and the way my brain works. In my opinion, Simon is a very bright little boy, and I very much hope that some way will soon be found to help him to overcome his physical difficulties so that he is able to realise his full potential. So a year later, when I was almost 9, so this is the second half of class 3, so this would be year 4. Simon has definitely benefited from his sessions at Chelsea College. Just to explain, Chelsea College is or was, I don't know whether it still exists, was a college in Eastbourne that specialised in physiotherapy. And by this point, I was going there for regular physiotherapy sessions to help with my coordination and balance. So Simon has definitely benefited from his sessions at Chelsea College and now has much more confidence in the area of physical activities. However, he is still experiencing considerable difficulties with writing, and there is no doubt that this is inhibiting his progress. It is a great pity that the Buzz pen had to be returned because he worked very hard with that and was setting his own targets for success. You know what? I still remember that Buzz pen. He is a very intelligent little boy with a great deal of potential, and I am well aware that there are problems in the realisation of that potential. Yet, still today. But I think that the time has now come for Simon to take more control of his destiny. Still true today. He must start to develop a more mature attitude to learning and make more effort to interact with other children. At the moment, he is spending too much time on his own and is therefore not benefiting from the social learning which takes place in both playground and classroom. He also needs to assert himself more in group situations so that his ideas and opinions can be given equal weight with those of others. I think I've definitely changed in that way now. I do have my own opinions, and at work I'm never afraid to speak up and say what I think. Simon's company has given me a great deal of pleasure and not a few surprises over the last 3 years, and I wish him well in class 4. Mrs. Murrell was probably just about the teacher who encouraged me the most. You'll see my last 2 years at primary school, I had 2 teachers, Mrs. Vanoe and Mrs. Fowler, and they both worked different days. So they were joint teachers of the class. So yeah, these last 2 ones aren't quite as positive, but I will read them out anyway. So this is the first year of class 4, so year 5 as it were. Right, this was 1991. This was the year I had a 6-week visit to Australia. That is noticed in a note there in my attendance. Overview of performance. Simon still has many problems to overcome. He does not always make enough effort. We feel he's rather immature in many ways. Fair point. Recommendations for action by parents/teachers. Simon needs regular writing pattern type exercises to improve his fine motor control and help the appearance of his work. He needs more time to complete tasks and careful monitoring to ensure that they are done. Right. English. Simon's presentation is still very poor. His spelling and punctuation is good. He has a good vocabulary but still has difficulty speaking in class. He reads well. His handwriting is poorly formed, too large, using capital letters wrongly with little spacing. I don't think that ever really improved when I was at primary school or secondary school. I think it's kind of like only when I started going to work that I think it improved. Still not that nice, my handwriting. He finds listening hard. Mathematics. Simon's understanding is fair, but he works rather slowly and his presentation is poor. He often needs reassurance and encouragement. He lacks concentration and tends to daydream. Yep. Science. Simon understands the principles of a fair test, but his understanding of scientific concepts is weak. He does not work well in a group as he tends to rely on others rather than think for himself. Right. Topic work. Simon has difficulty in completing topic work because of his other problems. He cannot organise his work very well. He does not always try hard enough to overcome these problems. I like that the comment for music is simply Simon tries hard. PE. Dreaded PE. Simon finds all PE difficult because of his coordination problems. He generally tries hard though and participates as best he can. He is gaining confidence in swimming. Yay! Swimming! RE, religious education, needs to put more effort into his work. Art. Simon enjoys drawing, but his lack of fine motor control makes much artwork difficult for him, and his pictures are rather immature. Much like me. And then we get on to the final one. This is my one just as I was about to leave primary school and go off to secondary school. So, overview of performance at the end of my primary school career. Simon has not made the improvement this year that we would like to have seen. His poor motor skills prevent him from presenting his work in an acceptable manner. Recommendations for action by parents and or teachers. Work on a word processor as much as possible. We hope that he settles well at Ringler, which is my secondary school, and wish him well. Well, that was nice. Probably about as good as this report gets, that they wish me well. English. Simon's presentation has improved a little this year, but his handwriting is still too large and badly spaced. His spelling and punctuation is on the whole good. The content of his work is rather immature, and he needs to tackle more demanding books. Yeah, I said these weren't as positive as my earlier reports from Mrs. Murrell. Simon lacks confidence. Mathematics. Simon lacks confidence when approaching new concepts and needs to be more independent and flexible in both thinking and methods. He has used Dart and Branch computer programs successfully. He has poor understanding of his tables. think these days I'm quite good with times tables actually. Science. Simon shows enthusiasm for the practical aspects of science, but must persevere to overcome problems when carrying out an experiment. He has enjoyed observing and finding out about a variety of animals and plant life. I always have loved animals and plant life. Technology. Simon has many original ideas which he finds difficult to translate into 3D. He must try harder to find alternative ways of continuing a task when encountering difficulties and ask for help when necessary. Geography. Simon shows interest in the class and field work we have undertaken this year. History. Simon's written work needs to be more detailed and more carefully presented, but he is developing an understanding of the chronology of historical events. When I got to secondary school, history became my best subject actually. It was the one that I did least worst in my GCSEs. Music. Simon needs to develop more sustained listening skills. He has enjoyed helping to compose class songs and working on the accompaniment. Physical education. Simon participates in PE but finds it a difficult area. He needs to develop confidence in the water in order to become a more competent swimmer. Art. His poor coordination results in him having difficulty in this area. And religious education. Simon seldom volunteers information, but he clearly takes it all in. He has produced some good results and has covered a wide range of material. French. 100% concentration is required. Simon is inclined to dream. He could do well in the oral area of something foreign languages, but needs greater concentration. And personal and social development. Simon is polite and well-mannered, thank you. He has problems related to his peers, but he appears to be content in his own company. Yeah, I pretty much always have been. Even now, I love my friends, but I'm equally happy on my own. And finally, other interests and activities. Simon enjoys books and writing. He also swims and likes playing rounders. Now, I remember liking rounders, which is weird because I hate sports. I hate playing sports, especially anything to do with bats and balls. But I remember kind of rounders for some reason was the one that I liked. Does anybody even play rounders outside of school? And do they even play rounders in school these days? I don't know. So anyway, yes, that was a trip down memory lane to my primary school reports. Quite a lot that's in there, makes sense even now. Yeah, I think maybe it's interesting to go back to that first report and the bits about like standing up and reading out stories. I've always loved telling stories. I used to love making those books. And I kind of feel that if I'd have pushed myself more since that time when I was 6, 7, that maybe now 30 years later, I would be in that dream career of being